I heard on the radio that a 113-year-old church has been moved in one piece across a Swedish city, Kiruna, if I'm saying that correctly. It took 2 days to move it 3 miles, so there's a maths question in there. If a church is travelling 3 miles in 2 days, how fast does it travel? But it got me thinking, what's the most memorable journey you've ever been on?
I drove from Vancouver up to Whistler to go walking in the mountains up there. But that drive was about an hour and a half. Honestly, the views were astonishing.
I've driven the same road, Tom. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
Mine's not quite so memorable in a nice way. I might have been detained at Chicago O'Hare Airport about 10 years ago and had my passport taken off me temporarily. I was literally just going through customs and they obviously didn't like the answers I'd given them. Or like not customs, but you know, when you're like having to go and talk to them and they're really scary and angry. And yeah, little old me saying my answers to the questions. They said, okay, can I have your passport? Got some other guy with guns to come and take me to a different room. I just had an awful flight in to Chicago as well. I was there by myself. Loads of turbulence. And I was like, just get me back on a plane. Just send me back home. I literally don't even care anymore.
Hello, I'm Hannah Clark.
I'm Charlotte Fox-Rees.
I'm Tom Spencer.
And welcome once more to the world of agriculture and economics. Welcome to Agonomics.
This week, we're talking about beef price elasticity.
And no, this doesn't mean cows doing yoga.
Although I do know the cow pose is great for your back.
Well, that might be true, but no stretching or contorting here, as we're joined by David Swales to talk about beef price elasticity, what this strange term actually means, and what impact it has on the market.
Do they buy a lot less beef, or do they only buy a little less beef? You get some products which are relatively elastic, and some products which are inelastic.
We'll also hear from Graham Wilkinson. He may have left as AHDB's chief exec last week, but the team caught up with him before he departed to ask about what he felt were some of his biggest achievements.
Baselining, which I think is an absolute game changer. The 170 farms that are piloting it and helping us now, that is, my ambition would be that every farmer understands their baseline and they're able to work on that.
And as always, we've got this week's big question.
A reminder, new episodes of Agonomics drop at midday on Wednesdays. So follow us wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure you don't miss a show.
And do get in touch. Email us at agonomics@ahdb.org.uk.
Hi team, you ready for another bumper-filled week on Agonomics?
Always ready.
Of course.
And very exciting one, I think, this week with our chat, Hannah, we had with Graham this week, which we'll go on to in a minute. But also we've got to be on our best behaviour because being joined by David Swales, who is all of our managers this week, aren't we, on the show?
David's the boss, yeah.
Yeah. Big boss David.
Welcome to David. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've never been described as a big boss before. But it's interesting to see what you guys get up to in the world of agonomics, because I know, John, you often disappear off and lock yourself in a room somewhere and appear again a few hours later. So it's lovely to be able to see behind the curtain.
We're putting the world to rights.
It's always good stuff. I know there's going to be a good outcome at the end, guys. Don't worry.
So, yeah, I mean, Graham has now left us, unfortunately, as CEO of AHDB, but Hannah and I had the privilege of catching up with him before he left, didn't we, Hannah?
We did. And we kicked off our conversation by asking Graham if he'd enjoyed his time at the top of AHDB.
It's been an absolutely fantastic experience. A few people have actually asked me about this very question, and it's hard to describe. I think firstly, being able to lead an organisation such as HDB for an industry that I'm so passionate about is a real privilege to me. To be able to then lead a team of absolute experts that are absolutely passionate about what they do and do everything to look at how we can actually support our levy payers, I think is It's been a really positive experience. It's a complex organisation. There's no getting away from it. But I think one minute I would be stood on an international stage with the export team, and the next minute I'll be in a grain store with 150 farmers where we're actually bringing some of the science and the research down onto the farm where they're actually benchmarking and learning from each other. And I think that's just the breadth of this organisation is just quite unbelievable, and what it does on behalf of the industry and the levy payers. It's been a fantastic experience for me personally that I've really enjoyed.
Well, we've loved having you as our CEO, Graham, I have to say, especially with all the nice treats you bring in to us. I promise it's not a bribed answer that I'm saying there either.
Well, I know that you're partial to ice cream. So it's funny because the ice cream story, actually, I remember, so B that works in the social team, I said to B, it was a red hot day, and I said, if you can get an ice cream van here, then I'll buy everyone an ice cream, thinking there's no way you can just magic up an ice cream van. And within 30 minutes, she Teams messaged me and said, there's an ice cream van outside. This ice cream man turned up. And what I would say is that an ice cream man knows how to charge. His Christmases must have thought they all came at once. It cost me an absolute fortune that day. So I've got a new supply of ice creams for the office, a slightly more affordable ice cream supply whenever the team need it. But yeah, it was a good day in the office that day.
The improvement to the tea bags was also noticed and well appreciated. Move to Yorkshire. You can't go back. We can't go back now.
Week one in, I had a cup of tea and thought, this is we need to convert this team to proper tea. So I remember being stood out handing out tea bags first week in the office, trying to convert everybody over to proper tea, proper Yorkshire tea. So we've managed to change our change the tea in the office as well. I have done other things as well, other than ice creams and tea bags.
Graham, coming into this role, what were you sort of expecting from the job, and has the job met your expectations, or has it been different in any way?
It was very clear when I came in that the AHDB had gone through significant change and was actually quite bruised by that experience. And I think the team were probably feeling a little bit bruised. So I think it lacked a little bit of direction, a focus, a vision. And that's what I really enjoyed working on with the team. I think it was potentially one of my proudest moments being part of the team, is to be able to create a vision that we can all very much sort of centre around, which is about unlocking the success of British agriculture. That's what we're here to do in various shapes or forms. But it was an organisation that was ready to deliver, but probably did lack a little bit of direction and focus. And I think that's what I've managed to, or hopefully I've brought into the organisation.
And what would you say your top highlight then has been, aside from some of the change you've implemented, the tea bags and the ice cream? Any top highlight for your time with us?
Creating the vision and our values and doing that all together as one team with the board, the leadership team and the whole organisation last December. I feel that together we've really positioned AHDB to really deliver for levy payers going forward. So I think we've set the foundations right. So that, without a doubt, is probably one of my proudest moments. But there has been so many, and that's the fascinating thing about AHDB. So some of the reports that we've put out, the work that we did around inheritance tax, the challenges where we defended the industry around TB. We've done reports on the role of red meat, the benefit that brings to the UK diet as well. So there's so many things that we have promoted and defended the industry on. The baselining, which I think is an absolute game changer. The 170 farms that are piloting it and helping us now, that is, my ambition would be that every farmer understands their baseline and they're able to work on that. So I think that's it's a game changer for the industry and for us. But right away over to being stood on platforms at CL and some of the export, we helped generate £1.77 billion worth of export sales in red meat last year and 1.8 billion in dairy. The attractiveness of British produce that our farmers are producing here in the UK, I think is renowned around the world. It gives me a real sort of sense of pride to be part of a team that's helped deliver that. as well as the marketing work that we do, 47 million consumers that have connected with our Eat Balance campaign, the books campaign on dairy, the Eat Pork campaigns. There's so many highlights and proud moments for me. But I suppose personally, it's been quite easy for me because when you're surrounded by such amazing individuals that are absolutely flying and energized about what they do, sometimes I'm just the voice piece to that. It's the team that sit behind me that do all the hard work that are the real heroes as far as I'm concerned.
So, I mean, really, it's been quite a short time and you've done so much in that time. But I wonder, is there anything that you sort of wish you had more time to see through or to kick off?
So firstly, I believe even if somebody is seconded into a role for 3 months, that's 3 months of an opportunity where you can actually make a difference.
Yeah.
So regardless of how long you're in a role or wherever you are, you've still got the opportunity to leave it slightly better than where you found it. I think if I was to look at an area that I would have liked to have spent more time on, and there's probably a reason why I couldn't, was around the growth agenda. So if you remember, I set 4 key priorities: laser focus on our levy payers, leadership. We don't want to be a passenger. We want to be demonstrating leadership. And I think it's great examples of how we've done that. Our culture, so how we've sort of reshaped our values as to how we want to work as a team, as an organisation. But my fourth key area of success was around future growth. And this is where I firmly believe that AHDB and the team here have so much more to offer the industry. But we had to get the foundations right. We had to get the vision, the strategy, the focus right. And I personally believe that we are positioned now where we can actually step up and do more on behalf of our levy payers and the industry. So, that's where I expect an area where I'd like to see AHDB grow, step up more and deliver even more for the industry.
I mean, personally, I definitely think you're leaving AHDB in a better position than when you started. I mean, just the vibe and the atmosphere. We want to be bolder in what we're doing, and I think you really have embodied that and have brought that quality home to us more. And I think you are leaving us with that, right, this is the springboard now to go and do something really great.
To me, it's about empowering the people and the team to have that belief in themselves and confidence in themselves as well. And I think that we've absolutely done that. We know that there's plenty more to do, but I might be leaving, but I'm still in the industry. What I would say is I've been working for a levy payer, and I'm going to be looking at the AHDB team as being an extension to my new team, because I understand all the work that AHDB does. The ability to be able to tap into the resources here is fantastic. So you don't get rid of me that easy. I'm going to be ringing you up on day one saying, I need some help. I need some analysis. I need this. I need that. So, it's a great resource. And my message to any levy payer would be, get involved and get in touch, because there's so much available that can really support your business at AHDB. That's been one thing that I would definitely be tapping into in my new role.
And you'll get quicker responses if you send the email to Hannah or I asking for that advice, and there's a little, ice cream hinted at along the way. You'll definitely get that response a bit quicker.
I'll do my best.
So before you go, though, are there then any parting words of advice for our future CEO who is yet to be appointed? I know we've got our interim, Janet, starting, but for the future moving forward, what do you think that the new CEO should know or do, or anything you can advise them on?
So I've already had conversations with Janet as part of my handover process. So one thing I'm saying to Janet is we have a very formalised business plan structure now where we report on that monthly. We've got clear KPIs, deliverables. So focus on delivery and making sure that we deliver is really important. I think from a future CEO perspective, I think the two things I would say is, one thing that I've been really focused on is listening. And I came into it from day one wanting to listen to the people and listen to the team here at AHDB and get under the bonnet of the people here. So when you say listen, I mean really listen, and sit next to someone and ask them and find out what they're doing. And they'll give you little nuggets of advice. I'd say really get into the engine room of AHDB, but listen. And also, without a doubt, we must continue to listen to our levy payers. What really matters to them, we know that the industry is at quite a defining moment. It's at a crossroads. So we need to be able to listen. We need to be able to be agile, adapt. As an organisation, we need to continue to do that. We need to stop doing stuff and start doing new stuff that ultimately delivers, better value for our levy payers. So those would be my words of advice. But we're surrounded by amazing levy payers and an amazing team. So empower them, motivate them, use them, and the success will come.
That was a really lovely chat with Graham that we had the other day, wasn't it, Charlotte? It's a shame that Tom wasn't there to join in.
I mean, it was a shame that he wasn't there, but it did mean more ice creams for us, didn't it, Hannah?
That is true.
Well, I'm sure some of you might have got a tea bag in the post. I don't know. A handwritten letter from Graham himself. So I was very proud to receive that. And just to hear about all the different things he got up to over his tenure. I'm also, excited to see what's going to happen going forward.
Yes, because Janet Swadling has started, of course, at AHDB as interim CEO. Janet's no stranger to AHDB. She used to be on our main board. So we very much look forward to what Janet has in store for us. And on behalf of Team Agonomics, welcome, Janet.
We'll look forward to having you on an episode soon, especially if you bring ice cream.
So without further ado, time for a quick break. And afterwards, we'll be looking at beef price elasticity with our very own David Swales.
Hi, I'm George Craddock, analyst at the AHDB, here with a quick update on the grain and oilseed markets for the week commencing Monday the 18th of August. Global wheat futures have moved down in recent weeks, and fortunately UK feed wheat followed, now trading around £167 per tonne. The downward pressure came from ongoing harvest progress across the Northern Hemisphere, strong production prospects and currency movements. The EU harvest is underway, with the picture mixed over yield and quality, but looking better than last year. In the US, the maize crop is set for a record-breaking year, with projections of 425 million tonnes. The US dollar has weakened against the sterling and the euro over recent weeks, further adding pressure as prices adjust downwards to keep competitiveness. Paris rapeseed futures for NOV25 closed at just below £410 per tonne on Monday, with prospects currently looking better than last season for the EU rapeseed harvest. Chicago soybean futures have risen gradually since early July, following earlier price pressure driven by favourable growing conditions across the US and Canada. The market also found support in late July from the new US biofuel policy and more recently from reduced global oilseed production estimates. Looking ahead, news on crops being harvested in the Black Sea in Europe, as well as conditions of US maize and soybeans as we near harvest in September will be key factors to monitor. To stay up to date with the latest data and analysis across arable, red meat and dairy, head to ahdb.org.uk and click on Markets and Prices.
Welcome back. You're listening to Agonomics with me, Hannah, Tom and Charlotte. And now's the time for us to dive into the world of beef price elasticity. And David's going to talk us through what this weird term actually means and talk to us about some analysis we've recently done. David, what does beef price elasticity actually mean?
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, and thank you for having me on the podcast. So, I think price elasticity is a bit of a technical term, isn't it? And it's the sort of word economists sort of throw around a lot. In a nutshell, what price elasticity is looking at how much demand or supply changes of a product in response to a change in price. So, in the instance of beef prices, which we've been looking at recently, we all know, and I know previous editions of Agonomics, you've been talking about how beef prices have been increasing so rapidly. So as the price goes up, what does that mean for consumers? Do they buy a lot less beef or do they only buy a little less beef? So, you get some products which are relatively elastic and some products which are inelastic. So it's a really important issue to understand, what impact price changes have.
So the term elasticity then, it's not about how stretchy something is, it's the consumer response to price change.
Certainly, if you look at price elasticity of demand, which I guess is the specific thing which we've looked at here, that's all focused at the demand side of the equation. And certainly we know at the minute, price increases and economic growth, and all these things present quite a challenging backdrop for our consumers, the cost of living crisis and all these things. So consumers' ability to pay higher prices maybe is a bit more limited at the minute than it would otherwise be. And I think part of the reason we did this piece of work was there was quite a bit of concern amongst our processing levy payers, because they were experiencing this rapid increasing deadweight beef price. Prices surged earlier this year from about £5.50 a kilo all the way up to above £7 a kilo. Now, a lot of that price increase wasn't passed on to shoppers in the stores, but I think our processors felt that, John, at some point, some of that price increase would have to be passed on. And there was a bit of concern really about, well, what's going to happen when some of those price increases are passed on in the shops? Will people literally just exit the category? And that was what we wanted to do really with this piece of work, like explore what impact future price increases at retail level would have on demand for our products.
This is when I can drop in a phrase that I love, and I'm probably going to butcher it. So tell me if this doesn't make sense. Past behaviour can be a great predictor for future behaviour. And I guess that's where some of this work is then focusing on, isn't it? You know, because how do you work out how elastic the consumer is going to be when it comes to their beef purchases? Well, actually, it's looking back at what things have happened previously, isn't it, David?
Absolutely, Charlotte. So I think there's lots of ways to model future events, aren't there? And I guess when you're looking forward, there's an element of risk in what you're doing. And John, I mean, you can't always be absolutely accurate. But what we did with this work is, John, we've got loads of really good retail purchase evidence at AHDB. John, we work with a range of suppliers and can kind of understand from all that back data what's happened in the past. And for this particular piece of work, we looked back at a period of time in 2022. For those of you who can't remember what was happening then, there was actually quite a bit of retail price inflation going on. Beef prices were increasing at retail level by 16%. So there was a lot of price inflation going on. And John, we can look perhaps back at that period to kind of understand how consumers responded. But there are some important differences as well, which we need to factor into our analysis. So during back in 2022, there was a lot of inflation going on generally, wasn't there, driven by the war in Ukraine. Maybe some of the issues are a little bit different now around the cost of living crisis and the state of the economy and those sorts of things. So it gives us some important things to consider, but we do need to then factor in how things have changed since 2022.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of coverage on the news recently. New figures from the Office for National Statistics have shown how food prices are really contributing to inflation. I guess what were the sort of key findings from the research, David, in terms of impact of price inflation on consumer purchases of beef?
Consumers respond in different ways, don't they? We sometimes talk about consumers as if they're a single group. The reality is there's loads of people out there and they're making lots of individual decisions. But to try to summarise what was happening, we found that although prices may go up by a certain amount, say on average 10, 15, 20% or whatever it might be, consumers don't automatically just end up spending that same amount more. What happens is they adopt a range of behaviours, and lots of consumers try to do things to try to mitigate the impact of rising prices. So what we found in our research was there's probably sort of 4 or 5 key, and we talked about levers in the research. So there's 4 or 5 key levers which consumers pull to kind of deal with rising prices. So the first of those is probably a bit of an obvious one, and I'm almost embarrassed to tell you what it was, but consumers do buy a bit less beef. Yeah, so the price goes up. So one response is, let's say you're buying a 750 gram pack of mince. The price has gone up 10, 15%. I'm going to stop buying that and I'm going to start buying a 500 gram pack of mince. Yeah, so you just buy a bit less of the product. So there's some of that going on. But then there's a range of other things which we see as well. So, John, the other things we saw was people buying fewer cuts. Yeah, so you might buy some mince, some roasting joint and some steak. And actually, I'm going to drop the steak out of that mix, changing the sort of product mix you're buying to manage that inflationary impact. Then we also see a bit of switching going on. So some consumers decide, well, actually, I'm going to switch out of beef because it's getting expensive, and I'm going to buy chicken instead because it's cheaper, say. So a bit of switching happens. And then the final two are kind of related a little bit, and it's about managing that price increase. So some consumers might trade down. So they might trade down in terms of the stores they shop in, or trade down in terms of the tiers. So I'm going to stop buying premium and start buying standard. And the final one is around buying on promotion. So I'm going to buy more product when it's on promotion. So what we saw in our work is all of these levers are pulled to various degrees. When you sum it all up, unfortunately, it does mean there's a bit less beef being bought overall, which obviously is a concern and something we need to think about.
I was really interested, David, by the switching analysis that came out. Was there a specific meat that people were switching more to? I know you mentioned chicken, or was there a sort of range of places that the consumer was potentially going to move to?
Yeah, so that's something we do look at very regularly. So obviously beef doesn't operate in isolation, and linked to our price elasticity of demand, one of the factors in terms of how elastic or inelastic a product is whether there are substitute products which people can move to. And in the area of meat, there's obviously a whole range of protein options which people can choose to switch in and out of if prices start to rise a lot. So the big winners we've seen in the last year or so, even in terms of proteins, has been chicken. There's a load of switch into chicken because of its lower price point. But yeah, just recently, the last few months, pork has been doing really well as well. So, it's those two, and they're both lower cost proteins than, say, beef or lamb. So it does very much link to this cost of living crisis driver.
We talked a lot about retail, David. Is this something that's affecting the sector in the food service side of things as well?
Yeah, you're right, Hannah. It does affect all of demand. So we've done another piece of work looking at food service to understand what's happening there. And I think if I was to summarise that, I'd say some of the trends are very similar. You see fewer restaurants having more expensive proteins even on their menu list, or they cut down the number of dishes available to consumers. But yeah, certainly consumers probably are buying fewer meals which feature beef than they were previously. So there is a bit of switching going on at food service as well as at retail.
I think one thing I'll take from this is obviously there's lots of things which consumers are doing to try and mitigate some of these price rises, but they aren't leaving the category, which I think is really important to still put in there. Beef is still important to consumers, isn't it? It's hopefully, not going to be going anywhere from that. So what do you think some of the opportunities might be from this, David, to maybe turn things around in the foreseeable future?
What we don't want to do is sort of do a piece of analysis and a piece of research and find, there's a problem here. We want to think about, what can we do to mitigate some of the negative effects from these rising prices? As part of the work, we identified a range of things. Now, some of those things are quite tactical things and quite operational things, which processors and retailers might consider doing. We provide a lot of the detail of this research to those types of audiences so they can understand the impact. So a good example there would be this issue of consumers buying less. It's really important in that type of environment that there's a range of different pack sizes for consumers. So if they can't buy a smaller pack size, they might leave the category altogether, as you say. Whereas if there's a range of different pack sizes there, it gives them the opportunity to trade down in terms of the size of the pack. So that's something which I know lots of the processors are thinking about. Can we tweak the size offering so there's product available at a lower price point and you keep people in the category? But some of the stuff we need to do off the back of this is more long-term in nature. So, at AHDB, we obviously spend a lot of levy payer money on marketing, don't we? We have the We Eat Balance campaign. The aim of that work is really to promote beef and lamb and really highlight some of the the sort of unique benefits beef provides, maybe over and above chicken. So, do you know what I mean? Hopefully that helps to protect the category a little bit and explain to the consumer it's more than just price. There's other things you need to factor in terms of some of the benefits that beef can provide you. So I think at times like this, that type of marketing work is really important. And the final area AHDB needs to think about, and probably AHDB and probably the whole industry, probably the reason we're in this situation of really high inflation is it's a supply-driven factor. Do you know what I mean? We are seeing a decline in supplies at the minute for a whole host of reasons. And a key reason for that is probably related to the profitability of suckler farms. There's a real challenge there. And I think it's for the industry to kind of look at that issue and think about what can we do to support our farmers to have profitable production and to have sort of resilient businesses. Because if we continue to have periods of time where we lose lots of supply, that's going to cause this type of thing to happen again. Now, that's a really difficult fix, Charlotte. It's not something you can fix overnight, and it's probably not something AHDB or any one individual business can fix. But I think it's something we need to think about. So as a whole industry, what can be done? What can government do? What can other stakeholders do to help support our farmers going forward?
I think that's a good chance to have a break now. Thank you so much, David, for taking us through that. We'll be back in a bit.
Roots to Resilience is the flagship knowledge exchange programme from AHDB Beef and Lamb. The programme was designed to be relevant to everybody in farming, with 3 key principles: ownership, clarity and community. Upcoming activity includes a 4-day Ranching for Profit workshop on the 17th to the 21st of November in Bristol, succession activity at the beginning of December, and business and finance activity in January 2026. To find out more, visit the AHDB website.
Once again, you're listening to the Agonomics podcast. Don't forget that episodes are released Wednesday at midday. That's every single week. And if you've got a question for us, please do email in agonomics@ahdb.org.uk. But for now, Alice, I believe we have our big question of the week.
Indeed, yes. This week's question is, what do the dairy industry acronyms AMPE, MCVE and MMV actually mean, and do they affect the milk price I get?
That's a really good question. And thankfully, we still have David with us, who used to work in the dairy market specialist team of old. So he can explain what these mean. But just to give a brief overview of what the acronyms mean, because we love an acronym in the agricultural sector. AMPE stands for Actual Milk Price Equivalent. MCVE stands for Milk for Cheese Value Equivalent. So AMPE is an indicator of the factory gate value of a litre of milk used for butter and skimmed milk powder, or SMP. MCVE is an indicator of the factory gate value of a litre of milk used for mild cheddar and whey powder and butter.
And then the MMV, milk market value. So that's an indicator of the average market value of a litre of milk based on sort of the total utilisation of milk in the UK. So in sort of a few short words, it's sort of trying to compare your farm gate milk price to the processor's price. But David, I'm sure you'll be able to enlighten us much more than I can. Take us away.
The key point here is that AMPE and MCVE are market indicators, yeah? So they exist to give farmers and industry a feel for what their milk is worth when it's processed into certain products. Yeah. So what we're doing with AMPE and MCVE is we basically look at for AMPE, I mean, once you've processed a litre of milk into SMP and butter, what's that litre of milk going to be worth? So we factor in the yield of product from that litre of milk. We factor in the cost of producing the product, and it gives you a pence per litre value So a farmer can compare their milk price with that. So if a farmer knows their milk is going into butter and powder, they can think, well, the processor's making X pence per litre. Why are they only paying me Y pence per litre? And MCVE is very similar, but it's looking at processing milk into mild cheddar and whey powder, what the values of those commodities are in a pence per litre value. So if a farmer's getting a milk price which is higher than AMPE or MCVE, depending on where their milk goes, they're going to be quite happy with the situation. But maybe it's a sign that in the future, their milk price might come down a bit because the processor's probably not making that much money. And similarly, if their milk price is below AMPE and MCVE, they might be then talking to, or their farmer rep might be talking to the processor to say, hang on a minute, why is our milk price not a bit higher? So it's an indicator, and John, it's not 100% accurate. It will vary from plant to plant, from processor to processor, but that's what it's aiming to do, help farmers understand what their milk's worth. So I think your question from the farmer was, how does it relate to my milk price? So I think the key answer is it's an indicator of what milk is worth for the industry as a whole. And that helps them understand what their milk might be worth, and probably is a starting point for a conversation with the processor.
Thank you, David. That was a brilliant answer, very succinct. But I think that now brings us to all we've got time for this week. So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you may listen. New episodes drop on a Wednesday, and we'd love to hear from you. So please send any questions, thoughts, or feelings to the email agonomics@ahdb.org.uk.
That's risky asking for feelings, Charlotte.
I'm always open to what people might have to say.
There's a spin-off there, Charlotte, I think. Agony Aunt section of Agonomics.
Ah, I'd love that. Send in your Agony Aunts questions to the Agonomics corner.
Or just where you're listening from. I'd love to hear it. Are you in the tractor? Are you in the car home? Are you busy in the field?
Are you abroad in a foreign country?
Or just sat on the sofa? Love that too.